Hey everyone, welcome to Over 50 Starting Over. I'm Barry Edwards.
And I'm Merle Garrison.
We got a lot to talk about today. What a week. What
No
a
kidding.
week. I mean,
Yeah.
This is like the busiest news week I can recall. And during this week, I was super busy back at my rental house doing projects frantically for the 2 week period, almost 2 week period that I've had to do them in. And so I was working.
Yeah, how you coming? How you doing?
Oh God! Wow, it is raining like cats and dogs.
Is it really? Gosh, how
yeah,
nice.
it is, and we've needed it.
Yeah.
So how's it coming? This has been the worst. See, these kind of projects, more often than not, go very difficult with a lot of difficulty. But sometimes I'll be in a flow of where
Yeah.
everything works out great, and so when I'm in those kind of zones, I just try to do more and more and more. Well, during
Right.
this period, I have no flexibility because of my time frame, and everything's going horribly. I have this huge dark cloud over me. Everything that I touch
Really?
destroys something. Tools are breaking.
You're like Baby Huey.
Oh yeah, and Baby Huey, I haven't heard of that in decades.
Yeah. I haven't thought about that in a long time, but I could just see you in there.
Oh,
Oh boy.
it's been awful. It's been awful. And I'd say the one bright side is, so last weekend I had my client turn friend, Brian Hall, come over, the electrical safety training guy.
Yeah.
He came over to help me. Like I installed a new garbage disposal and dishwasher, and he came over to help me hook up the electricity. And as it turns out, the plumbing as well. Both of which, these two things, I hate doing so much, and mostly plumbing, without fail. Every time that I do plumbing, at the end of the day, it takes me 3 more days to get that final leak out. Without question, I may as well not even touch it for 2 days after the initial installation, because it's always day 3 when I solve the problem. And plumbing is like a very simple puzzle. It is not complicated, but something just weird always goes wrong. And so there's that. But I wanted to say, so Brian helped me install those things like really professionally, and fixing the final problem worked out. But so then the following day, Sunday, I helped him install his fence. Do you hear a strange clicking sound? I think we had a little bit of difficulty with our
Yeah. You're breaking up pretty good here.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully, maybe that has something to do with the storm.
Could be. A lot of times that happens. We can hear.
We'll do what we can. Hey, welcome to Over 50 Starting Over, everybody. I'm Barry Edwards.
And I'm Merle Garrison.
And here we are. What is the date today? I don't know.
Today, is it?
It's August 28th.
28th. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Happy Friday. It is storming over here. May have a little bit of an effect on our connection. But Merle had a challenging week, a hugely challenging week. We've had so much going on in the news. Some of it I couldn't even keep up with for a large part. But so I've been at my rental property. I've had 2 weeks to do a ton of projects that normally I would take the entire summer on. Just a lot going on. But I've had this black cloud hanging over my head where just everything I touch goes wrong. And a lot of times what I would do is, when I have the time, is simply set up that part of stuff down for a while. I'll just go back to my client work, let that cloud pass. That is exactly how it goes. It's like an energy field. But I've had no choice but to power through this, because I've only had this 2-week period to install a dishwasher, a garbage disposal, a new kitchen floor, and a multitude of other things. And everything that I touch turns into another project, or a tool breaks. It's just been really difficult. Not enjoying this. Honestly, I felt defeated every step along the way, and yet I have to power through it. I got these renters coming in Sunday, and right now my kitchen, most of my house looks like after the Beirut, during wartime. It's just like a bomb went off. So that's where I'm at the moment. Tons of, oh, I'd say
Right.
the bright side is, though, well, I like to try to give some kind of encouraging career news, and hopefully you have something. But I had my client turned friend, Brian Hall, the electrical safety training guy I bring up from time to time. He came over to help me with the electrical and even the plumbing on the dishwasher and sink. And that was really, it turns a horrible job, a nightmare job, into it's tolerable. At the end of it, I took him out for dinner on a patio and some beers. So that was a lot of fun. The next day, I came over to his place and helped him. He was putting up a fence, a privacy fence, and he was really stuck with digging some of those holes with rocks and roots in the way. And I'm at least good at brute
Ah,
force. So,
that's a real friend right there.
yeah, I enjoyed helping him with that. Got to see his wife Jeannie, and she's just a doll. And then they made me dinner after that. So
Ah,
the moral to the story is make friends with your clients, help each other out.
right.
Makes life just a heck of a lot better. It
That's for
really does.
sure. Well, it's always better when you're working with people you know and you like,
It
and
sure
that's
is.
awesome. I
Yeah,
love
how'd your
that.
week go?
Oh man, another busy week going on
I
here, and
bet.
yeah, it's a good experience that I'm having here, and you know, I just think that embracing everything that you're doing and just getting the most out of every day, taking it day by day, is really the key here. I'm making really great friends.
Nice.
Like I said, great experience.
That's really good to hear. I don't have a lot more to add in the career and self-improvement part because my week was so all-encompassing and challenging, and even after this, I got to fly back and go 100 miles an hour right back into it. But I will say, as far as current events go, I'd spend my morning having coffee and checking out the news, and so hard to keep up with the stuff that's going on in Wisconsin, the RNC, the constant protests. And hey, I have something figured out. I
What's that?
asked you last week. I've probably asked it a few times. I've been asking it over and over again. What the strategy would be for the Democratic Party to the Democratic cities that are they're burning their own cities. That
Right.
they're going to turn this onto Trump somehow, and I haven't been able to figure that out. Well, I know the new mantra I found is simply that this has happened under the Trump presidency.
Right, right. I think
That's it.
that's the big deal with the COVID-19 thing as well, is that they want to pin this on Donald Trump. That
By simply saying that over and over again, when the obvious thing is you're burning your own cities.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame to see the whole thing. I mean, you take a look at Kenosha and what's happening there, and
Mm,
first
yeah.
off, I mean, how horrible what we're seeing happen there, and the senseless violence that's going on. But this morning I was reading about how the lieutenant governor says that we don't need an investigation to know that Blake's shooting falls in a long and painful pattern of violence. And this is a pattern of violence that happens against Black lives too often across this country. So, in other words, let's just overlook the fact that the guy was reaching for a knife in his car.
And wasn't he already resisting arrest prior
Yeah,
to
there
that?
was it was a situation where this is where it's so easy to conflate what's happening and blame the police for
Mm,
every single thing that happens. And even Jacob Blake's mother is coming out and saying, "Hey, please stop the violence. We can
mhm.
sit down and talk about this." But the whole let's avoid doing investigation into this because this is a black uh, crime. This is the whole 400 years of violence against black people and that kind of thing. I mean, so we should throw out truth and reason.
Due process, all that. Look, we see the same thing over and over again. First of all, you never see these incidences against white people, which is more common than it is with black people. We've
Absolutely.
done statistics on that.
Yeah.
The other thing is, every one of these has involved resisting arrest. sometimes very blatantly. The guy that stole the taser and turned and fired back on the cops.
Right. Down in
Not
Atlanta.
saying that that a lot of these situations like Floyd, the George Floyd thing, that was a horrible situation. It truly was. But again, what you never see until the next day or even the next week are the extenuating circumstances around that. What happened before that led up to that, which is, resisting arrest, being on drugs, and these different things that made a very difficult situation. We just assume, it is assumed by the media that these are innocent people getting shot at. And then you got idiots like LeBron James coming on into the media and saying once again that he feels like he's being hunted as soon as he leaves his mansion. It's things
Yeah,
like that. This
I
is
know.
absolute lunacy. Everything
Well,
that's going on right now is lunacy. How about those diners? Those
gosh, can
diners
you
being
believe that?
intimidated. A
Uh,
bunch of white people doing a Black Lives Matter protest. At least that's what I saw, as white people, and intimidating people that are out minding their own business, supporting the local business, having dinner, and to supporting Black Lives Matter. That is that if that isn't we're beyond the socialist movement now. We went straight into the fascist movement right there, in my
it's
opinion.
interesting because socialism and fascism are very much related to each other. They come from the exact same family. So when they start to look similar, it's for a reason. It's also interesting to note that socialism and communism, there's really a blurred line in between those two. It's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
So what we saw in the communist movement was the same thing we're seeing today is the fist up like this. That is a communist symbol. What we saw in fascism was the Heil Hitler thing. It's very similar again. Interestingly, the event that you're talking about right now, there was a little bit of background information that I got from that. One is that they surrounded that woman and they were yelling at her, and I found out that the reason that they were yelling is because she wouldn't put her fist up in
Right.
solidarity with
Right.
them. Number two is that there was a young Black woman who was leading that mob of people who had orchestrated the visuals that you saw, which was all white people surrounding this person. She asked, and I quote, "White people, step up." And so she made, now, first off, can you imagine a white person saying "Black people step up" like that? I mean, that just sounds
That
so
wouldn't go
wrong.
over well.
No, I don't think it would. And the other thing that was happening there was that they had there. Somebody wrote an article and said, "Well, where were the men in this
Mm.
situation where this woman was being harassed and abused? No man steps up to protect this person." Well, there were men there, and you know what they were doing? They were
Mm.
putting their fists up in the air. I
Wow.
gotta say that there's an old adage that says bad things happen when good people sit there and do nothing in the face of evil, and that's what we're seeing right now. We're not seeing
Mm.
any type of courageous act of
You know
people
why?
standing together and saying, "You know what? We're not going to take this anymore. Aren't you sick of this? Haven't
I
you had enough of this?"
I am so angry, Merle, that I want to yell into this microphone. I really do. And the whole reason for this, it's the cancel culture. We're going to call you racist and destroy your career because most of us, like you, okay, I'm self-employed, so I'm kind of immune to this. But you're out there in corporate America, and if people turn on you, your career could be in jeopardy for sure. That's what people are out there with,
That's true.
families, raising their families. They don't, and they want safety. So, but I'll bet you it's going to show up in the polls. I think this entire movement and the Democrats are starting to recognize this. As Biden, I think it was last night or the night before, came out and finally denounced the rioting for the first time. They are
Yes.
recognizing that this is going to force votes for Trump for sure. That there is such a violent fork in the road right here. They're basically saying now that if you don't vote for Biden, you're going to have more of this violence on your hands. That's basically what it's come to at this point.
Well, I
So what do you
believe
do
that
as a voter? What
whether
do you
you,
do?
I believe that there's more to that story, though. I believe that if you vote for, if Biden were to win, the violence doesn't stop at that point. You're going to defund the police. How is it that violence is going to stop at that point?
None of this makes any sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense. If you take a look at Biden's policies, where you're going to add trillions of dollars into the tax situation, you're going to open up the borders, you're going to give free health insurance to illegals.
None of it makes sense.
Okay, so that equals a flood of illegals coming into our cities. You're going to have no police protection. You're going to have people that don't have any money to support themselves. Oh yeah, school choice goes completely away. You have your schools are going to be closed because he's already promised that he's going to shut down our economy again because of COVID-19. How is it that we're going to be safer? How is it that the violence is going to stop? And by the way, if you look at history, and we're looking at people that are cities that are being bullied right now, what happens when you appease a bully? Does the bully capitulate? Never, never. We did the same thing to Hitler. We appeased him. It emboldens the bully. That's what happens. Bad things happen in that situation. I think it's really interesting. Go ahead, Barry.
I just wanted to, you made that Hitler comment so quickly. I want to say that this is exactly what I've been thinking about. Hitler didn't rise to power on his own. He won over the backing of the people. The people of Germany got behind him in the movement.
They did.
And that's what's happening right now.
Exactly. It's exactly, history is repeating itself right now. They used the economy actually to cause that to happen. Go ahead.
Also evolution, the theory of evolution. Who was it? Darwin? Darwin's theory of evolution was just coming out at around that time and gaining popularity. And so he was, this is the part I always find funny. So he made the argument that the Aryan race is the most superior, and based on a theory of evolution, look at Hitler. What about him as Aryan?
Yeah.
I never
Does he look like an Aryan?
Never got that. Never got that.
I think it's interesting to think about that, and the
fact lunacy that people will buy into.
Yeah, the fact that he was using race as a way of
interesting
of really his politics were based on race, and then you take a look at what we're doing right now, and you have organizations like Antifa out there, and they're all about this Black Lives Matter movement. They're all over it, and they are doing exactly what the brown shirts in Nazi Germany did. Yep. The brown shirts were the ones that came in. They were the terrorist unit. They all dressed in the same colors, and they came in and they beat people up. They intimidated people. They suppressed the vote. They're doing exactly what they did in Nazi Germany. And by the way, the brown shirts learned it from Italy under Mussolini, where he had his version of the brown shirts, which were called the black shirts. You know, the father of fascism is Mussolini, and he had the black shirts, and Antifa dresses just like those people.
Ironic.
It is.
It's also ironic that people that call everybody racist are really the racists. That the people that call other people violent, they call the right violent, and they're the left, the far left, is the one instituting all of this violence and burning down the cities. It's everything about it is beyond irony. It's just lunacy.
The interesting thing that we're seeing here is we just had the Republican National Convention, and I know we're going to get into that, but the thing that I noticed was the diversity that was on display during the convention all 4 days. You know, we saw people of every color, of every race, of every nationality that were Americans up there on the stage, and they were talking. And we heard from the left things like, oh, those are the token blacks. And they should be ashamed of themselves. They ain't
black. That's what Biden would tell
race. And we heard Bette Midler come out after Melania spoke and said, "Oh, she still hasn't learned English." And these are
Oh,
the people that are
wouldn't that be a
supposed to be,
xenophobe?
yeah, well, and it's you want what it comes down to is they're exposing themselves for exactly what you just said, is that they're the ones that are really the racists. They're the ones that are really the xenophobes. They're the ones that have an agenda to bring in not legal immigrants, which the Republican Party or the conservatives completely support. It's illegal immigrants that they want to come in. They're the one, and there's an agenda behind that. It's
Getting
not
votes.
because they love immigrants, it's because of votes. Exactly, that's why they want to take down, in the midst of a pandemic, that's why they want open borders. Does that make sense in any way at all?
I honestly don't know how so many people are buying into this movement. What exactly I mean, for the common person, or even I don't know, the celebrities live in such a bubble that they're delusioned. So there's that. But for the common person that well, you know what the thing is? I think the common person, it's the young people. It's mostly the younger people that have been brainwashed in college to the leftist ideology and never taught about the atrocities that happen to the common people as soon as you start converting into going down the socialism, communism to fascist path. That leads to 100 million and counting deaths. All right, so I think those are the people that are buying into it. But as far as anyone like over 30, are they really like, when everything's gotten this extreme, do you think most people are still buying into this? I don't.
Well,
I believe the silent majority is growing beyond what anyone realizes. That's
I
my opinion.
believe that you're making a great point there. And I think there's two types of people out there. There are the people that are just diehard. They've already made up their mind. It doesn't matter what anybody says right now. If you try to put facts in front of them, they have to save face, Barry.
Mm.
There's no way that they're ever going to admit that you're right when in the face of facts. But then there's another group out there, and we're seeing it. I was watching C-SPAN, as a matter of fact, and they had a show on where people were just calling in and talking about the fact that they've seen both conventions and they're disgusted by this whole thing. They feel unsafe. They feel afraid for the future. They're concerned, and they feel that the Republican Party is actually giving them hope, and they're leaving the Democrat Party, and
Mm.
they say they're going to vote for Trump, because not so much that, oh, I love Trump, it's that they love what he stands for.
I think
And
it's the horrors of the left
the,
that is in a mess. It's in a tailspin.
well, I think that you're right. And you made a great point earlier, is that Biden is finally coming out. And I think you're right that it was last night that he said, but burning down communities is not protests. It's needless violence, violence that endangers lives, violence that guts businesses and shutters businesses that serve the community. That's wrong. Well, what took you so long, Joe? It's been several months now that this has been happening. You didn't mention it. No one mentioned it during the Democratic National Convention. But it was interesting because this week on CNN, Don Lemon talked about the fact that this was hurting Biden in the polls. He said it's showing up in the polls, it's showing up in focus groups. It is the only thing that right now that is sticking. Well, isn't that interesting that that would be the thing that they're talking about, rather than this is destroying people's lives? Over 30 people have died
Ex-
during these protests.
ex-
Our cities are being ruined. These guys are in charge of the news. You're talking about polls?
they're talking about politics. The politics of it, the movement is more important than the lives that they're losing.
And so doesn't that erase the whole concern over George Floyd, that really you're
Ooh,
not really concerned about
ooh.
George Floyd, you're concerned about politics, and you used him as a pawn in order to get your agenda? By the
Excellent
way,
point. Excellent point.
there's information that's come out this week. I think it's very interesting. I mean, we were talking about this at the beginning of the show, but there's interesting information that's come out regarding the autopsy of George Floyd. Now, there were two autopsies. There was one by the county and another one by George Floyd's family. Both of them they've been telling us have been, the evidence says that a homicide had happened. However, that's not the case. The first one, while it says homicide on the cover of the autopsy, the evidence inside of the autopsy never once mentions homicide. In fact, what it says is that George Floyd did not die of any of the injuries that were sustained. He did not die of asphyxiation. He died from cardiac arrest, and that he had more than 3 times the lethal amount of fentanyl in his system. In fact, what they're saying is that George Floyd, and now we've already seen it, the
I want
body.
to say, for the record, I think there were 3 different autopsies, and one of them did say that it was absolutely from the pressure on his neck. So there's conflicting stuff there.
There's been 2. I've been researching this week. There's been 2, one that the family sponsored and one by the county. The county is saying that it was cardiac arrest. Now, if you take a look at this, George Floyd was yelling out all the way up until he passed out. He obviously was breathing. If you apply pressure to somebody's neck to the point that they can't breathe, you can't yell out. Body cam is actually showing that.
I can't give that officer a pass on that.
I'm not giving the officer a pass.
I understand George Floyd's. I'll fully give you that the media does not show George Floyd's own fault in all of this.
Let me just get this out: is that body cam evidence now that was hidden by the Attorney General of Minnesota until recently is showing that George Floyd was complaining that he couldn't breathe long before he was actually on the ground. And they were saying to him, well, you seem to be breathing. And he said he couldn't breathe. Then they tried to put him inside of the police car, where suddenly he had the strength of superhuman strength, which is what they're showing here in this autopsy report, is that these are all symptoms of an overdose of fentanyl. This having the superhuman strength, panicking, becoming confused, having a hard time breathing. These are all the things that happen shortly before you die of an overdose of fentanyl. And the fact is that the man had 3 times the lethal amount of fentanyl in his system. This is one of the most dangerous opioids that's out there. It's 50 times more potent than heroin. And the evidence is that no one has actually lived with that amount of fentanyl in the system. There's other evidence as well, but here's what I just want to say. And I'm not giving the police officer a pass. However, there is evidence that the hold that he had on him was not actually restricting his breathing. And he didn't actually have his knee completely on his airway. It was on the side of his neck. The autopsy actually corroborates that whole story. So why hasn't that evidence actually come out until now? That's my point.
It doesn't support the agenda, and we know that for sure. I also want to make a counterpoint that both CNN and Fox News reported about that more than 24 former Republican lawmakers endorsed Joe Biden on the first day of the GOP convention.
Yes.
So
Which does not surprise me.
No, really?
Not at all.
It surprised me during the climate of.
Here's why. This is the interesting thing about this is that Donald Trump came in to drain the swamp, and the swamp is not a party affiliation. The swamp has everything to do with the bureaucratic rule of this country, and that Republicans and Democrats have been beholden to that. Yeah. And so I have to say that, it's interesting because it seems to me that there are people in Congress that want you to believe that the battle against Trump is really all about the party.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to know that it was a Republican that first brought the dossier to the media's attention. That was John McCain. It's Republicans that didn't stand against the Russian collusion theory when the evidence that the dossier was completely bunk
Mm-hmm.
was without a doubt. It was the Republicans that didn't stop the impeachment. It's the Republicans that haven't done anything about this violence that's happening in the cities. It's the Republicans that have allowed the shutdown of all of these cities. It's the Republicans that are standing there doing nothing in the face of evil. And as I said at the beginning of the show, bad things happen when good people stand there and let evil happen. And I'm actually more angry at the Republicans for doing nothing than at the socialists that are doing what socialists do anyhow.
What you expect?
What do you expect? And so I
Ooh.
just believe that we have a problem, and the fact that
Corruption.
Republicans have come out and supported Joe Biden is just them exposing their true colors.
You're
These are
making excellent
Republicans in
points.
name only. And that's why I said many shows ago that my allegiance isn't to the Republican Party. My allegiance is to the conservative ideology of the Constitution. And so as soon as you start to fade away from the Constitution, I'm not going to support you. I'm actually disgusted with what the Republican Party has stood for. But I have to say, in watching the Republican National Convention, they stood for the conservative ideology that I support. And from the moment that show came on, I was moved.
I didn't watch it for the same reason I didn't watch the DNC, and it's just because of the clown show that it is. I will probably see. I just as soon read about it the next day, get the highlights, so I don't have to sit through the entire clown show. This election is embarrassing on every level from both sides, and so I can't. And then didn't Kimberly Guilfoyle open up? Wasn't I saw her?
She didn't actually open it up.
She didn't open. Okay.
Yeah, but that
was embarrassing.
That was the anomaly. Yes.
Okay.
I have to say that it's interesting that that's what you saw. That because I believed as soon as I saw that, I thought, if I'm the left-leaning media, I'm going to say this was the centerpiece of the Republican National Convention.
Correct.
And that's exactly what seemed to happen. I was embarrassed when I saw that. I thought it was really weird.
It was weird.
Yeah, what the heck was she doing?
Think, was she nervous? Maybe took a little Ambien or had a few drinks?
She is a professional speaker. There's no excuse for that. She's a news person. She's used to look. There was not even a crowd there. So, which is really what made it so weird. So, what the heck? And you know who else was weird on that first night? There were two speeches that totally stuck out in the entire Republican National Convention. It was Kimberly Guilfoyle and it was Donald Trump Jr. Also weird.
I didn't watch his speech, but I heard it was pretty good. I mean, I heard some opinion.
It was weird.
It was? Okay.
They're an item.
Right.
They go together. So
I have
think they were practicing with each other.
Yeah, exactly. I have no respect for Kimberly Guilfoyle. I used to watch her on the 5, and everything about her is fake, and her speech came off very fake.
It did. It came off as insincere. And see, this was my problem with the Democratic National Convention, is that it seemed so fake and it seems so insincere. And besides all that, the production value of the Democratic National Convention, it was terrible. It was like
it was 4 years ago as well.
Like PBS.
Yeah.
It was not good. And the production value of the Republican National Convention was really it was amazing, I gotta say.
4 years ago when it was here in Cleveland, it was dynamite. I kept riding my bike down there just to check it all out. It was awesome. It was very cool.
I have to say, I was, last week I was saying about the Republican National Convention. I was saying, I'm not going to hold my breath about this after seeing the Democratic National Convention, but I was wrong. I thought that they made a very compelling argument from the moment they started to the moment they ended, besides Kimberly Guilfoyle and Donald Trump Jr., which I thought his content was good. In fact, if you listen to Kimberly Guilfoyle or if you just read her speech, I would say, okay, the content was good because the delivery was just really weird. But I saw some really amazing things as I watched this. That first night, Vernon Jones. Do you know who Vernon Jones is?
I know the name, that's all.
Yeah, he's a Democratic congressman down in Georgia.
I do know who you're talking about. The guy is said to be very up and coming. He's got a bright future ahead of him.
Well, not in the Democratic Party. I mean, they want his head down there because he said that he would support Trump, and they tried to run him out of the state Congress there and really make sure that he resigned. He almost capitulated to that, and yeah, it was really bad, and it was all because he said that he couldn't support Joe Biden. And isn't that interesting that if you go against what they support in any way, they're going to try to shut you down? And that's why he was speaking at the Republican National Convention, of which he made some spectacular points during his speech, along with Herschel Walker. Have you heard Herschel Walker speak recently?
No, I haven't heard his name in 20 years.
Oh, well, Donald Trump actually owned one of those football teams that he played for in the USFL.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's how they know each other, and they've become very good friends. And he was talking about how it just hurts his heart when he hears people calling Donald Trump a racist. And he was talking about a personal experience that he had going down to Disney World. He took Donald Trump's kids down to Disney World at one point and said that at the last minute, Donald Trump decided to go. And that he'll never forget the picture of Donald Trump riding the It's a Small World ride wearing his suit. I thought that was funny.
But, I wanted to get back to a point that you made a few minutes ago about the corruption of the government and on both sides, because I think, because you said Trump came in to drain the swamp, I absolutely believe that, and so that's why, as you saw, that 24 former Republican lawmakers turned against him. I think this is the biggest problem that we have in this country right now, and we lose focus of it. I think it's intended that we lose focus of it with this right versus left thing going on, and protesting versus riots, all these distractions, who's violent, who's racist, who's xenophobe, who's this, that, and the other. And when you see, like, in the Democratic Party, I've mentioned this before, when they can't back Tulsi Gabbard, who I think was the one person who had the best chance of beating Trump by far, they couldn't back her because she's not part of the establishment. She doesn't take any corporate funding, and everyone knows this, that she's not part of the establishment. And even though she checks the boxes for being a woman, being Hawaiian, so a woman of color. Even she would have been the youngest presidential nominee ever as well. And she's absolutely brilliant and poised and got all the lights are on in everyone's home. So they couldn't back her, and they go with the old white guy who's senile in Biden. That shows you right there how corrupt that party is. And then, as you say, about the 24 Republican lawmakers turning on Trump as well. Now, I will say, it's easy to say, well, Trump is just an embarrassing buffoon, because I find him to be an embarrassing buffoon. But I think that your point, I didn't want to gloss over that. I think the Republican Party has a whole lot of corruption to be dealt with. You made some excellent points there a few minutes ago.
Well, absolutely. It's a point that I'm going to disagree with you on is that I don't think that Trump is a buffoon. I do think that sometimes he's embarrassing, but I have to say that I believe in most things that he stands for. And I kind of like the guy. I
Really?
gotta say, yeah, I really
I
do.
geek.
I would like for him to be my next door neighbor. As a matter of fact, I think it'd be
Really?
fun. Yeah, when I see him interacting with people just on the side,
Uh,
he's fun. He's got a great sense of humor.
he's truly a real blue collar guy. He truly
Yeah,
is.
he's a guy you could sit down and talk to. Even though the guy's a multi-billionaire, he seems like a guy that you could sit down and talk to. He's gracious to people. He treats people like people. But if you get in his way and you're going to try to get over on him, he's going to fight you in the mud. As I was saying, it's really the bureaucrats have taken over the country.
Yes, they have.
It's no longer government of the people, by the people, and for the people anymore. We're
Corporations.
not in control any longer. There are nameless, faceless individuals that are unaccountable to the people that are the ones that are actually running this country. And Donald Trump got elected because there is an awareness of that happening. And there's an awareness that there are elected officials that are beholden to those forces right now. Joe Biden is one of them. Hillary Clinton was one of them. Barack Obama is another one. And I would say that this is not a Democrat thing. This is a Democrat and Republican thing. I would say George Bush was one of them as well. Bill Clinton was one of them. Ronald Reagan was not one of them. This is what he was fighting against. That's why Ronald Reagan got elected president despite all the odds. That's why Donald Trump got elected despite all the odds. And this is why you have this tremendous force that's been against him for the last 3.5 years, is because the media, the academia, Hollywood, everyone they're all in the boat with the bureaucratic nation that we live in. And now I think it's interesting when we look at history. If we take a look at the Nixon administration, when he ran for his second term, he actually won by the biggest margin of any other presidential election in history to date. He won by a landslide. He was running against McGovern, who was standing for socialism. And within a year, he was impeached, almost impeached. And the fact is that his platform was almost identical to the platform that Trump is running on, had run on, which is drain the swamp. He said that he was going to come at the bureaucracy and make government for the people, by the people, and of the people once again. And when the bureaucratic people found that out, they had their man. And very interestingly, almost the exact same strategy was used against Donald Trump. I can remember that whole Strzok text that was intercepted. The FBI agent that said that they had a secret weapon if Trump were to get elected. Look what happened. Almost the exact same thing they used on Nixon happened to Trump, although Trump was smarter than Nixon and probably a lot less corrupt than Nixon was anyhow. But here's a guy that is truly running because of what he believes in. I really believe that. That's what I'm seeing. He's not the perfect guy out there. Nobody is. But when you start looking at the choices between a guy that wants to give us, we the people, the government control versus Joe Biden that stands for the bureaucratic nation, and that's what socialism is, by the way, there is no choice. There is no choice.
Well, I would say one thing that's interesting. I said this to you privately before. We've had this conversation. I think Trump may be the perfect person because of his extreme narcissism, that you could call him racist, xenophobe, homophobe all day long. He doesn't care. It just doesn't affect him.
I actually don't believe that. And here's why. We've talked about the fact that, this Trump derangement syndrome, right? that there's this Trump derangement syndrome and people
It's
are
real.
crazy. I believe in a sense it's real. But here's what I really believe that it is that nobody hated Trump when he was the number one television show, The Apprentice. You never heard that he was a racist or a xenophobe. You might have heard some stuff about his past because he's a multi-millionaire with women and stuff like that. But nobody disparaged him until he started to run for president. And here's my point. It's not so much Trump derangement syndrome. It has everything to do with what he stands for. And what he stands for is people in America having their God-given rights, which is freedom. And they don't like that at all. And they know that he will not back down until the people have it, and they'll do anything to take it away. Take a look at what's happening to our cities right now. They're willing to burn their own cities down.
Mind-blowing.
In order to get rid of this man. And so when they're coming after Trump, they're really coming after me and you. That's how I see it.
Did you hear, though, what Trump's sister, Marianne, was secretly recorded by his niece, Mary, admitting Donald is cruel and has no principles. And she says he was a brat and paid a friend to take his exams to get into college. Can you believe this family? I mean, the hypocrisy of calling, Trump's sister secretly recorded his niece. That right there is so underhanded.
Okay. Yeah, right.
I mean, I think most of us could find a family member that's going to say something bad about another family member. To record them and put that out in public, I think is horrifying. So, I mean, the whole purpose is to, of course, make Trump look so bad. This is kind of like the when he was with that porn star. They tried to put out that stuff that he cheated on Melania with the porn star and acted like everybody was going to be shocked and turn on Trump. Nobody's shocked by any of this. But what is horrifying is that his own sister would do this.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say about that. I think it's terrible what's happening there. Donald Trump's brother died within the last few weeks, and they were very close. And apparently, the brother was the father of this niece. And it's just too bad that whole thing has happened. However, going back to the Republican National Convention, what I did see outside of Donald Trump Jr., which I didn't really like his speech, but I do like what I see when I see the rest of his family and also Donald Trump Jr. really honoring their father the way that they do and the way that they speak about him, and Melania as well. That actually was warming. And I think that the media has made him out to be somebody that he really isn't. Like you say, I don't think that he's all about himself. I don't think that he ran for president because he's all about himself. I mean, who in their right mind, being a multi-billionaire, would volunteer for all of that abuse? I certainly wouldn't.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense.
Would.
I don't know. I mean, think about it. He had his life set. He didn't have to do all of that.
Agreed.
And so I think it's really because he was sick of seeing this massive takeover of our liberties that he actually got involved in this in the first place. And when you take a look at the accomplishments that he's had over the last 4 years, I made a list in our notes. It's actually astounding. It's actually astounding to see all of the things that he's been able to accomplish in such a short time. It's really interesting. I heard this several times, that Donald Trump has accomplished more for Black people in America than Joe Biden has in
40 years.
47 years that he's been in politics. Trump's been in it for 3.5 years. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of accomplishments that he's made. promises that he made when he was running for president that he kept. I got to say, I've been following politics ever since I was a little kid. I've never seen a president actually keep his promises that he made during the campaign. He's kept all of them.
You know, the irony once again of this, the left, Biden, whoever's writing his speeches for him or his talking points, I don't know, but he's kind of, and they always follow the thing, well, if you say it over and over again enough, people will take it as truth. And so one of his talking points is that Donald Trump has to start doing something. He's a do nothing president. I totally believe what you said. I thought he did more in his first month as a president than Obama did in his 8 years.
So it's amazing when you take a look at it. I mean, there were times where they started to go through the accomplishments that he's had, and I tried to write them all down. It was impossible to keep up with it. It was a flurry of accomplishments that he's done, and things that we should all be proud of that he's been able to accomplish.
Straightening out the trade deals, tariffs, and stuff like that, I think was about the most important thing I could remember.
I agree. Yeah. Because what you saw here was 1 in 4 manufacturing jobs were lost due to the NAFTA trade agreement, allowing China to enter into the World Trade Organization. Donald Trump reversed those decisions, and as a result, we did start to see manufacturing jobs coming back into the United States. Yes. Blue-collar workers were starting back to work, and these are the things that'll take a nosedive. I mean, here we are. We had over the summer 9 million jobs come back after coronavirus, and this is an historic record that's happened here. You get Joe Biden in there with his policies. He's going to turn those trade agreements back around.
Yep.
We're going to see those jobs go right back into other countries like China again. It's going to be terrible.
Stock market will plummet.
Hey, I got to ask you a question. We've got these debates that are coming up. Do you think that now Joe Biden has said that he will debate Donald Trump? Do you think that that's true? Do you think he'll actually debate Donald Trump?
I don't know, man. I know he doesn't want to, and I'd bet anything that the whole Democratic Party is plotting a way to get around that, because they're going to do something. You know, they're going to use coronavirus or something as, Joe's got to remain in his bunker. You know, they're trying to keep him there at all costs, because the more he talks, the more trouble he gets in.
I was talking to my mom about this, and she was saying she didn't think that there was any way that you could avoid this. And I was telling her that no, there's no law that says that Joe Biden has to debate Donald Trump. And I was saying, look, if he gets a black eye from not debating Donald Trump, it'll probably be a lot less of a black eye than actually, because he's going to get 2 black eyes if he debates Donald Trump. I mean, we've seen him on these interviews. There was one just recently, a CNN interview right before we got on the show, and it's like the guy can't. First off, he can't speak. He's having a hard time staying on point. He's jumbling up his words. He's not making any sense. And Donald Trump is sharp as a tack right now.
Agreed. And he will give us so many film clips of, just horrible gaffes. That's what he does. That's where he's at.
He will.
I think
to your point.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to say, to your point, Nancy Pelosi this week stated, I don't think there should be any debates. I do not think that the president of the United States has comported himself in a way that has any association with truth, evidence, data, and facts. And she went on to say, I wouldn't legitimize a conversation with him nor a debate in terms of the presidency of the United States.
Well, there we go. There's the strategy. We're going to turn this on Trump because he lies.
To your point earlier, Barry, you were talking about the excuses that they're going to come up with in order to get Joe Biden out of this, that they're going to come up with some strategy. So it was Nancy Pelosi actually came out this week to say, I don't think there should be any debates. I don't think that the president of the United States has comported himself in a way that has any association with truth, evidence, data, and facts. And she went on to say, I wouldn't legitimize a conversation with him nor debate in terms of the presidency of the United States. So there it
Wow.
is.
So they're going to turn it around and put it on Trump.
Yeah,
Why
because
they
he's
shouldn't have.
shameful.
Yes, yes, and his rather extreme I don't want to say fabrications, but bending of the truth. That's
Right.
hyperboles for
He
sure.
doesn't tell the truth, so we shouldn't debate him. He doesn't deserve it. But isn't that exactly the reason why you should debate somebody?
That's a really good point. That is exactly why you debate somebody. You just pointed out their flaws and their weaknesses, and you should have somebody go out there and attack that.
Yeah, why? I mean, that's really the reason for the debate, so we can expose those weaknesses, those errors. That this is where the proverbial rubber hits the road. Hey, speaking of Nancy Pelosi, she also came out this week in where she was speaking about the obstruction of the Postal Service, which I think is a bunch of BS to begin with. The Postal Service has never been good in my entire life.
That's a fact.
And she's out there saying that the Postal Service is election central, which, where did that come from? I've never voted over the mail. I know some people do absentee voting, but I think that's a rarity. I think the polls are election central, and they always have been, but again, distorting the truth. But anyway, she was on MSNBC, and she was saying that we take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring of the Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue with their allies in Congress, in the Congress of the United States. She went on to say, and Steve Scalise came back and it said Nancy Pelosi just called Republicans domestic enemies. I was shot because of this kind of unhinged rhetoric. Wait, you just said that Republicans are domestic enemies. I mean, talk about over the top.
Yeah.
And then, and then last night after the RNC convention happened, I found out that Rand Paul is reporting that he was attacked by a mob as he was leaving the White House.
Oh, I thought it was as he was leaving the RNC. There's all these
maybe that's
protesters, and sometimes there's a very blurry line between protesters and rioters, but that were protesting the RNC. So they are outside of that and intimidating people involved with it. And that is disgusting. That is absolutely, I don't know. What's the word? Impeding our rights, our political rights, and as citizens. So I find that completely disgusting.
Well, when you have Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, the leader of the Democratic Party, saying these types of things, it seems to be legitimizing that type of behavior. And I think that she needs to be held accountable for that type of thing.
Agreed. I completely agree. We should go to, on a lighter side here as we start to wind this up.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you if you've watched anything cool, funny, interesting lately.
I have been watching this show on HBO called, oh boy, now I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's I just got done watching that whole series, the Perry Mason series, which was so good.
Yeah.
And I started to watch this new show, and I'm slipping me the name of the show, but it's by that guy Jordan Peele. He's actually producing the show, and it's kind of interesting. It's a series that's out there, and it's called Lovecraft Country. It's a little racy in certain areas, but it's certainly got my attention, and I think it's going to be good. It's only had 2 episodes so far, but it's on HBO. Might want to check it out.
That sounds cool. I got into just a couple of weeks ago, as I started all this renovation on my house, these projects, I've been going to bed watching this series I found on Netflix called Bloodline, and it's really good. It's set in the Keys, like Key West, and it's about a family who kind of a self-made family have become kind of prominent in the neighborhood, and three brothers and a sister, and then of course the older parents. They own this like what do you call it? Like Airbnb property,
Oh,
not
yeah.
that. What do you call it? Resort kind of thing,
Oh.
a real down home kind of resort area. And it centers around the one brother who's the messed up guy. You know, you got the black sheep of the family in every family. And this guy actually tears the family apart. So the kids are adults now, but it slowly unfolds as to how he, whether he became twisted through events of childhood or whether he was just born that way, is kind of an issue, one of the underlying storylines there. But the guy who plays this, the messed up brother, is Ben Mendelsohn, if I say his name right. He plays the messed up brother Danny, and he's so good and so believable that I just thought they had to go out into the swamp and find this guy and say, you gotta play this character here, you know. And I had to look him up, and because he even talks a little bit hillbilly, a little bit like he's got a little bit of brain damage, or like he's drunk all the time, or because he's drug abuse and alcohol abuse his entire life. And he talks like this. Now he's an Australian actor, and he loves playing these different individual characters. I looked him up on YouTube, and the video was something like the top 10 characters by Ben Mendelsohn, again, if I say his last name right. And so I just wanted to see what this guy's about. He's a really, like, one of the real actors who just loves delving into a character. And when he finally got to Bloodline, he goes, Danny, I wish I could talk in an Australian accent. I can't.
Don't even try.
Yeah, right. But he said, there'll never be another character like Danny for me to play. And I was just very impressed with it. He loved that character, and he did it so well. I will say the one thing about this is I just got to the end of season 1 where it seems like it's all wrapping up. I'm not going to give anything away. And I thought it was the end. No, there's a whole another 2 seasons to go. I was actually a little disappointed in that.
Really?
Because and this started with Breaking Bad. I always thought it was the best show I'd ever seen. They had 5 seasons. And if you missed an episode, you missed a lot. And it ended where it should have at 5 seasons. They could have milked that like everybody else does, as long as they could, until they ruined it.
Yeah.
Like they did with Lost, like they're doing with Walking Dead, all these things where they're just milking a cash cow and ruining the art. Well, I thought this show Bloodline would have been absolutely perfect, ending at the end of this one season, which is 13 episodes. And so I don't even know what they're going to do with the next 2 seasons, because I looked it up. There's a total of 3 seasons. So I guess it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But I think it's a high quality show, and it's set in the Keys. You know, I've never been to all the places I've been, and I'm a beach bum. I've never been to the Keys.
Oh,
and
right?
It's been a huge draw for me, because you feel like, okay, because this family, like the couple, as the parents, moved there when they were very young, like in their 20s, and then started their family. So these 3 brothers and the sister all grew up there in the Keys. Gotcha. And you get the feeling of what it's like to actually live there.
Oh,
and it's very interesting. Yeah,
I understand it's very different living down there too.
It
seems
would be
like what a life.
Yeah, it's so different. There are places that if you actually were born and raised there, and that's what your view of life is, like New York City for one, Hawaii would be another. But there are in the Keys, like if that's where you were born and raised, it would be very difficult for you to move somewhere else.
Oh, I can imagine.
You know? Yeah, it's just a different way of life. Well, that's what I got.
Hey, I wanted to also say that my 19th anniversary is coming up in between
Wow.
this show and next show. And so Anne Marie and I have been married for 19 years. And
It's
I just want to
huge.
say congratulations to Anne Marie for putting up with me for 19 years.
That's really great news. Yeah, congratulations to you
Yeah.
both. Think what an event it's going to be next year.
Oh, 20 years. That's a
Yeah,
big deal. But 19 years is a big deal too. So,
it sure is.
and then I also wanted to say, and love you, Anne Marie. I also wanted to say that this weekend, actually, this is, something very interesting has come out of this whole COVID-19 and shutting down churches and things like that. We've been doing an online Bible study for the past, few months now. And it's actually my turn to host the Bible study that we're doing on Saturday. We do it at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific time. And I get to host it this week. So that's been a really positive thing that's come out of this.
Yeah, I like it. Do you have a link or something that you would want to share in the show
I
notes?
tell you what, if there's anybody that wants to be a part of it and wants to send a message to me, I'll send out a link to you.
Yeah, mail at over50startingover.com. Just email us there. And for that, I'd like to say go to over50startingover.com to sign up for any of our podcast platforms or our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page. Right from there, we share 5 different kinds of high quality content every day. So it'll come right into your feed. But the most important thing you could do is simply sign up to our email list. A pop-up will come to you on over50startingover.com. Sign up there and you'll get our podcast and our show notes right to your email box, nice and convenient for you as it develops.
And we also love to hear your comments and your feedback too. So, and we might just even read what you said if you don't put any swear words in there.
There you go. All right. With that, Merle, we're going to sign off. Thanks a bunch, brother. I love you and see you next week.
Love you too. Talk to you later.